The devil is in the details, and so I will be giving a lot of detail, because most of you here heard some version of this talk before, and to help, hopefully, for you to absorb it, I'll let you know ahead of time that basically I'll have 4 sections to the talk. First of all, a little background on how many shots we thought there were based on the non-acoustical evidence. Secondly, then I will give a brief primer on the acoustical evidence itself. Thirdly, I'll talk about the NRC panel's criticism. And then fourthly, I'll get around to talking about the criticisms, the article written by Linsker et al., which just came out last month or two. You'll notice that most of the authors on this recent paper were also co-authors on the NRC report of 82, Linsker being the one new fellow on there. Linsker and Garwin from IBM. Garwin, at least, is associated with the Star Wars program, less amicably known as Pigs in Space. I mention that because I'm not the only person who has accused these folks of fudging their success rates, their evidence. MIT has recently come out with a report on how they've systematically exaggerated the results of their Star Wars tests.
Where did they publish it?
MIT?
Where did they publish it?
The MIT study?
No.
Oh, this paper here just came out in Science and Justice.
I want to ask about the MIT study.
Okay, the MIT study I saw online.
What should I Google for?
I would guess Star Wars. I ran across it looking for IBM, looking for Garwin. I don't remember what I Googled. Yeah.
I'm sorry, which government was involved in MIT in the study?
Garwin.
Is it Garwin or Sherlock?
Garwin is the president's advisor on Star Wars.
Oh, Garwin. Maybe in the presentation.
Yeah. I think they call it that. According to the official mythology, President Kennedy was killed by this fellow, Lee Harvey Oswald, and fired no more, no less than exactly 3 shots from a position in a window in a building behind the president. That was the Warren Commission's conclusion. That conclusion was never in accord with the evidence available to the Warren Commission. The Warren Commission did tell us about witnesses who saw a man with a rifle shooting from the book depository. It also says that there were some witnesses who thought gunshots had come from the area in front of the president, which they would call the grassy knoll. As Josiah Thompson showed in his study, it was not some witnesses, it was actually the majority of witnesses whose testimony or statements are recorded in the Warren Commission's documents thought that gunfire had come from in front of the president, this area. Secondly, if you note from the wound pathology evidence, the Warren Commission had told us that the president had a through-and-through bullet hole in the back of his head, back of his skull. And of course, if that were true, then we would have no doubt that he had been shot from behind, at least in the head. But when the autopsy photographs and x-rays become available, there is no photograph showing a bullet hole in the back of the skull. There is a picture, this one, which shows what appears to be a bullet hole in the right temple, which happens to be where we were told on the 22nd November where he had been shot, in which the mortician assures us was a hole, that he filled it with wax. And of course, unlike this hole here, the lateral x-ray shows that the track of bullet fragments through the head does match up with that hole, not with that one. So we have autopsy evidence would suggest that he was shot from the right front. And then last but certainly not least, when President Kennedy was shot, the Spooger film shows that his head snapped backwards, which is exactly the opposite of what the Warren report had said, the president falling forward. Well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand Momentum, we've all caught a baseball or been bowling, and if you're not athletically inclined, then you bump into things, and you know that an object in motion pushes another object in the direction it's going. And so the movement of the President's head backwards would seem to be cogent evidence that the shot came from the front. Whereupon this fellow, Louis Alvarez, took it upon himself to denigrate that evidence in an article in the American Journal of Physics, in which he claimed that he could explain the rearward movement of the President's head as a jet propulsion effect, which I guess you would have to be a rocket scientist to understand how that would work. Even Alvarez actually in his article said that he was insufficiently versed in fluid dynamics to explain it in detail, and so he showed that empirically by using shooting a honeydew melon and making the honeydew melon move back towards the shooter. Cantaloupe? I believe it says honeydew in the... You were there. I know you were there. Okay.
What group is this?
That's right.
So a representative sample of honeydew melon?
The problem is that if we use elementary principles of physics, as Alvarez suggested, is that there's a fundamental difference between a melon and a human head, and that's the fact that a melon doesn't have a bone in it. You see, as Alvarez explained it, you have two sources of thrust here. You have the momentum in one direction, but the jet propulsion is going to come from the kinetic energy of the bullet, which inside of the head will cause a pressure, and that pressure will jettison material, the blood, brain fluid, atomized brain matter out that hole, and you'll get a propulsion effect, just like if you're holding on to a garden hose, it pushes the opposite. And of course, if your kinetic energy, the thrust from that is greater than the momentum, you'll get a movement in the opposite direction. But as I was saying, the momentum of the bullet is not nearly as important as the target hardness. That's what determines the amount of momentum that is deposited, because a bullet will have an impact velocity, and momentum